have something to tell you after class.
Cool, okay.
They don't have them anymore. I gave it.
Okay, guys, let's get going here. My name's Jim. Today is current legal issues. I never record it. I'm going to record it tonight. The main reason is because it's current legal issues, so it keeps changing. This is the best day of the whole course, okay? Very easy. You don't even have to think. Just sit there, okay? Let's do this. Open up your big 3-ring binder. Your big 3-ring binder to the very end. Your last session in there where it says current legal issues. The very last section. There's a green piece of paper there. And good grief, what is this in here? Okay. Right after that green sheet, here we go. Right after that green sheet, up on top it says murder stories are as old as the hills. Everybody cool? Everybody got that? Is yours on the car?
No, I got it.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Everybody got that, guys?
Yes.
Now, let's read this. I'm not going to read you all these stories, but I tell you what, if you live in Denver, you should know these stories. These stories are just too cool. And the first one is Daniel Arata. We're not going to read them all, but we're going to read this one for sure. Daniel Arata. It says a bad temper, a drinking binge, and a prejudiced community combined to make Arata's case a cause célèbre for Colorado. Arata, an Italian immigrant, was working behind the bar at Wawita Street's Simi Hotel d'Italia in 1893 when Benjamin Lightfoot, a Civil War veteran, came into the saloon. Lightfoot finished his beer and prepared to leave, but Arata, who had been drinking and playing with his gun all day, blocked the door and insisted he have another. Lightfoot obliged, but thought the drink was on the house. Arata asked him to pay up and took the veteran's hat until he came up with the money. When Lightfoot refused, Arata knocked him to the floor and kept kicking the 60-year-old man until his eyeballs popped out. Then he shot him, dragged him behind the bar, and continued serving drinks to a crowd that came after hearing a commotion. But police also heard the disturbance, found Lightfoot's body, and arrested Arata. The next night, more than 10,000 people, incensed that an Italian had killed a Civil War veteran, surrounded the city jail. They stormed the jail, grabbed Arata from his cell, and tried to hang him on a tree near West Colfax Avenue and Santa Fe Drive. But before he died by hanging, more than 20 people shot him. Disappointed latecomers put a rope around Arata's neck, hauled him to 17th and Curtis Street, and hanged him again. Is it the old West style stuff?
Crazy.
Does this have anything to do with real estate? Yes, it does. It happened on real estate. There's my tie-in, guys. That's the best I can do. Sorry. But again, these are just some wild Denver stories, Colorado stories. Here's a good one. This one is the guy who actually killed Jesse James, and what happened to him. This is Bob Ford. We're in the very help her find out where we're at. Would you, Karina? Thank you. Bob Ford. Ford's celebrated murder story actually started in Missouri, where the governor put up a $10,000 reward for the famous outlaw Jesse James, dead or alive. Bob Ford was a new member of the James gang, and he shot the leader using a revolver James had given him as a gift while he stood unarmed on a chair dusting a picture. The Missouri governor pardoned Ford, but didn't give him the reward. Saddled with the new notoriety, Ford moved to Colorado, where he was taunted with cries of coward and made enemies in Creed after shooting up the town in a drunken fury one night. Historians argue as to why a feud developed between Ford and Ed O'Kelly, a local law officer, but Kelly finished it on June 8, 1892. Using a loaded shotgun, someone handed him outside of a makeshift dance hall in Creede. Kelly went inside and walked up behind Ford. Kelly said, "Oh, Bob," and shot Ford from point blank as he turned around. Kelly was pardoned after just 10 years at the state penitentiary, but was killed in Oklahoma City 2 years after he was released. Pretty wild stuff, guys. Let's look over at Gertrude Gibson Peterson. This one, they still have shows about this. This is an amazing story. For decades, Patterson was hailed as the prettiest woman ever to stand trial for murder in Denver. But it was more than just her beauty that captivated Colorado in 1911. Patterson shot her husband during an argument outside the Richthofen Castle in September of 1911. She said he hit her across the face and was ready to strike again, but it was what the two argued about that kept newspapers in copy. The day after they married, Charles Patterson learned his new wife had been a longtime mistress of a Chicago millionaire. She vowed to sever her ties with the millionaire, but she couldn't keep the promise. She snuck off to Europe with him for 3 months, prompting Patterson to sue his wife for alienation of affection. She in turn sued him for divorce, and the deadly argument ensued. Yet Gertrude Gibson Patterson insisted there was more to the story. At trial and a newspaper interview, she said that she made the trip with the millionaire only because her husband had sold her into 3 months of slavery for $1,500. She said her dead husband tried to make her a prostitute and beat her when she refused his demands for money. The jury found her not guilty, a verdict that newspapers trumpeted as a triumph of beauty over justice. One juror even reportedly went to Peterson's hotel room the night of the verdict with 24 roses. After the verdict, Peterson was rumored to be aboard the Titanic, but she instead turned up in a villa outside Fontainebleau, living at the expense of her millionaire boyfriend from Chicago. Interesting? What do you think? Let's skip the next one and go to John Gilbert Graham. John Gilbert Graham on the right-hand side here. On November 1st, 1955, Graham put his mother and extra luggage on United Flight 629 headed from Stapleton Airfield to Portland and Seattle. The plane blew up over Longmont, killing his mother's 50-year-old Daisy King and 43 other people on board. All fingers quickly pointed to the 23-year-old Graham, who had done demolition work in the military. After 5 minutes of grilling, Graham confessed to the FBI, saying he sent his mother on board the flight with 25 sticks of dynamite rigged in her suitcase with a timing device. He needed money and wanted to collect on a $37,500 insurance policy. The Denver Rocky Mountain News called him the greatest criminal enigma in Denver history. And city police staged their greatest show of force at the prison because officials feared an Old West-style lynching. He later recanted his confession, but it took a jury 69 minutes to find him guilty. He was executed January 1st, 1957. But the greatest of all the stories, has anybody, who in here has never heard of Denver Spider-Man? You've never heard of the Spider-Man? That's about to change. You've got to know this story if you live in Denver. This is on the previous page here. Theodore E. Coneys. Right above it, right here, right above his name, where it says, Colorado's weirdest case featured Theodore Coneys as Spider-Man. Conies hid in a friend's attic for 10 months before revealing himself in a murderous rage. He was a drifter, looking for some place to spend the winter, but Conies became known as Colorado's infamous Spider-Man after killing an old friend and hiding in his attic for months. Colorado's oddest murder story started in the winter of 1941. Jobless and hungry, Conies headed to the North Denver home of Philip Peters, a 73-year-old resident who had taught Conies how to play the guitar. He wanted a handout, the Spider-Man said, but instead broke in and filched some food when he found no one was home. Afterwards, he found a small space in the attic, no taller than 3 feet high. He settled in for the winter. He stayed there for 10 months. Is that everybody's worst nightmare, having somebody living in your attic? He told the Denver Rocky Mountain News his story in 1942. Every night, I'd listen at the hole until I heard him snoring. Then I'd crawl down and go through the icebox. I'd take just enough so it wouldn't be noticeable. Yet, on October 17, 1941, Conies was busy eating a roast at the icebox, and he didn't hear Peters come up behind him. A tussle ensued, and Conies clobbered Peters over the head with a cast iron stove shaker. He hit him 37 times, left him for dead, and retreated to his hiding spot. Detectives were stymied. Even after neighbors said they saw lights and ghosts in the house after the old man's death. But police kept an eye on the house, and in July they caught Conies speaking out. They captured him as he tried to scramble back into the attic. The Spider-Man, who had been eating nothing but leftover strawberry preserves, weighed just 75 pounds. After 21 years in Canyon City, Conies died in prison in 1967. You know where this happened, guys? Almost across the street. Right down here on 33rd and Sheridan. Go down to 33rd and Sheridan and go east for 2 blocks. There's a park there. It used to be called Moncrief Park. They changed the name of it. When I was a kid, we used to play there. But again, 2 blocks east of 33rd and Sheridan. Take your kids there and tell them this story, okay? And what happens is on that park, just south of the park, there's a street, and on the other side of the street, there's these houses that point north. It's one of those houses where this happened, just a mile from here. I grew up over there. That's my hood in that area. And what happened is we would go over there at night sometimes. Well, what would happen, actually, when the police found Conies up in his attic, they actually went up there with a ladder to get the guy down. And the first cop opened up the scuttle to the attic, and the smell and the filth was so bad he actually passed out, fell off the ladder, and broke both of his legs.
Oh, jeez.
But what happened is we'd go up there and we'd take girls over there and we'd tell them the story about the Spider-Man, and we'd go running away, and the girls would come running after us going, "Oh, please don't leave us here with the Spider-Man." That was we quit doing that a few months ago. Anyway, true stories, guys, kind of fun stuff, you know. But let's talk about current legal issues. That's what we're talking about tonight. Let me ask you something. What do you think the current legal issues are in real estate right now in Colorado? What's that?
Dodd-Frank.
Godfrey.
Dodd-Frank.
Dodd.
Oh, I love Dodd-Frank. I love it. Dodd-Frank's about ready to get overturned, hopefully.
Yeah.
By the grace of God, it gets overturned. Terrible law. Destroyed the appraisal industry. Caused so many problems within our industry. Have you heard anything more about it? If it gets, I'll tell you what, when it gets defeated, we're going to have a celebration here, guys. Anyway, and this is a thing that was passed in 2010. It destroyed the appraisal industry. Appraisers can't be independent. They have to work for a management company. And we're paying $800 to $1,000 for an appraisal these days. It all goes to these management companies. They pay the appraiser $150, $200 to do the appraisal, and they keep the rest of the money. These appraisers are not making any money. They can't afford to be an appraiser anymore. Appraisers will be gone in 2 or 3 years if we don't get rid of the stupid Dodd-Frank. Anyway, mortgage brokers will be gone in 5 or 10 years without getting rid of this stupid Dodd-Frank. Christopher Dodd and Barney Frank is who's passed this stupid bill. So keep an eye on it, guys. Keep an eye on it. And as it goes, it was passed by it was defeated by the Senate. Now it's going through the Congress, if I'm not mistaken. One or the other. Anyway, keep your eye on it. And that is a good point. But what are the current legal issues we're taking right now? Let's change things. Let's go back 4 or 5 years. If I were to ask this question 4 or 5 years ago, the question would be foreclosures and short sales. That was our market back then. We had 600 foreclosures a week in Colorado, not a month, a week in Colorado. And this went on for years. For 5 years, Colorado led the nation in foreclosures. We led the nation in short sales. Short sales are where you owe $200,000 on a house, but it's only worth $150,000 because the values dropped so badly because of the collapse in 2006, 7, and 8. In the financing part of the course, I talk about that in great, great detail. If you haven't heard that yet, hopefully I'll be teaching that night when you guys are here. It's the most interesting part of the whole course. I go all the way back to 1906 and bring it all the way up to the present, and then even forecast it, what's happening to our financing. But 4 or 5 years ago, our biggest problems, our biggest economic issues were foreclosures and short sales. Now, environmental issues are taking over our biggest issues. Our biggest economic issue right now, our biggest economic problem we have right now, environmentally, would be mold. And mold is a huge, huge issue. The reason it's such a huge issue is because people hear a little bit about mold, and a lot of the information is wrong, and all of a sudden people have to hang their hat on the wrong information. Several years ago, you know, I can't keep track. I'll say 7 years ago, I'll stick it out later, it's turned out to be 11 years ago. I'll say 11 years ago, it turned out to be 7 years ago. So I always date everything I tell you that 10 years ago. Good round figure. I have no idea how long ago it was. But 10 years ago, I was involved in this seminar, this environmental seminar. And there were like 250 brokers out there. And we were giving a talk on environmental issues. And I was the first speaker. And I had 15 minutes. And I decided I would speak on mold. So I get up there and I'm starting this talk on mold, not realizing that the guy who was coming up right after me was the #1 mold mitigation expert in the nation. So I go up there with my 15 minutes of wisdom, and I'm talking about it, and I thought I was doing great. I kind of felt like taking notes on myself, you know? But then I got through and I sat, and the man walked up there. This guy had us spellbound. There weren't 2 or 3 people like him in the entire nation. He said some amazing things. What he said is that the Front Range of Colorado has some of the worst mold problems in the entire nation. And the reason we have them is because we don't think we have any mold issues, because it's so dry. And because of that, we have huge mold issues. You know, Seattle and Portland, they know they have a problem. We don't. He said Portland and Seattle would be a 6. We'd be a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10. But he said, mold is so very, very misunderstood. He said, mold is a part of our environment. Everywhere we go, there's mold. There's thousands of different types of mold. Less than 1% is dangerous. He said, when we open up a window to our house, mold comes in. We walk around all day long, and then we walk into our houses and we don't take off our shoes. We just keep walking. He said, take off your shoes when you go into your house. Simple things like this. I walk into people's houses and I see the shoes on the side. I say, good. That's a house I can feel comfortable in. That's a good habit to get into. And he was talking about one of the most deteriorated, most places, surfaces inside a house. What would that be, do you think? The one with the most contamination in a house?
In the kitchen?
You think kitchens, you think bathrooms, of course.
Basement.
Some parts of a basement, because it's low, you don't have your airflow down there. You know what he said? The bottom of a woman's purse.
Oh.
And when you think about it, kinda, you know? And so from now on, when you're in Safeway or King's and you grab one of those wipes, you're gonna hit, I remember Jim in class said about the purse. Good, I hope you do. Hit the bottom of that purse. I hit my phone, I hit my hands, I hit my face. People are walking behind me, they're going, what the heck are you doing? When I hit one of those, I'm a germaphobe, you know. And I think we all should be in this crazy day and age, you know. But anyway, and he said so many interesting things. He said that he'd been in this business so long, he would go into he said several of the jobs he did, he would go in there and mitigate it, get rid of all the mold. He said there weren't 3 people in the state of Colorado who could recognize dangerous mold. He showed a picture of the real dangerous mold. And it was like a subfloor in a basement where he showed the beams. And here was this, it looked like a rainbow. It wasn't ugly. He said, this is the most dangerous of all molds. He said, there's enough spores pouring off of this to contaminate this entire house. And people look at it and don't even think a thing about it. And at that point, he said, really, there were only 3 people in Colorado who would know how to do a mold mitigation. I have a friend of mine who comes in here, his name is Ken Ishmael, one of the top inspectors in Colorado. And when you get a good inspector, you hold on to him with both hands, guys, because an inspector will kill your deals right and left. You want to tell your people that the mold for an inspector and an appraiser and an inspector both have to mention mold. Yes, there's evidence of mold, but the bad ones leave it hanging like that. The good ones say there's evidence of mold, but there doesn't appear to be the bad mold. If you're concerned about issues, go ahead and have it tested, blah, blah, blah. The bad ones say, yes, there's mold in this house, and it's going to kill you. That's how people interpret it. And they kill your deals, guys. That'll kill your deals just bam, bam, bam. Tell your people, educate them before you start showing them houses. Say, listen, that inspection and that appraisal will both mention mold. They have to, because of liability issues. But only 1/10 of 1% of all mold is dangerous at all. This guy said that he's done many mitigations where he'd be sick for the next month. You know, not deathly sick, but he'd have the sniffles and whatever. He said some of the larger commercial mitigations that he did, he'd be spitting up blood for a couple of weeks. And he was in his mid-40s. He was retired. He couldn't even do it anymore because it had built up in his system so badly. Mold is an issue we have to take seriously, guys, but don't you dare lose any deals over mold. You will lose deals over mold if you don't explain it to your people ahead of time. when you're taking the listing on the house, or you're going to take these people around and find them houses. After I've told you this story, tell them this story. You don't have to tell them everything I've told you word for word, but tell them pieces of it. That mold is a part of our environment. It's everywhere. And mold and fungus are the same thing. I've been in basements, guys. I've seen mushrooms growing in those basements. More than once. It's not that unusual. And it's part of our environment. It happens. You can look in crawl spaces. That's where you see mold. Tri-levels in particular, where especially 4 levels, which are tri-levels with the basement. And in the basement, you pull open the crawl space that's in there, and there's these black splotches on the wall. It looks like paint. Guess what? It's not paint. It's mold. It's mold down there. And it's very, very important that you explain to people that mold is everywhere. It's a part of our environment. And you're not going to ever get away from it. Now, there's some mold situations that are worse than others. I had a student one time, young lady, 22, and she and her 3 roommates rented this house. And as they were moving in, they put a hole in the wall. And when they looked in the hole, the piece that they knocked out in the drywall, they pulled out, the backside was full of mold. It was a duplex, and the owner lived in the other side of the duplex. And they went over to him and said, "Look what we have here." He had no idea. He checked his place out. It was full of mold too. Now this is dangerous stuff. So they thought, well, it may or may not be bad. They tried to live in it. A few days later, one of the roommates got deathly ill. And pretty soon the other 2 moved out. She was the only one living there, and the landlord was doing everything he could to clean it up. But it was so bad, he pulled out the drywall and replaced it, pulled out the insulation and replaced it, pulled out the ceilings and replaced it. Denver has a huge mold problem, guys. Just make sure your people know about this, that it's going to be mold in that house, but it's not necessarily the bad mold. I don't know how else to say this. If you can take some classes on mold, take them. But to be a mold expert is just a matter of experience, really. That's one issue. What's another issue we should be concerned with?
Radon?
Lead-based paint, radon. Lead-based paint, any home in Colorado, how's that work? What's the date?
1972.
January 1st, 1978. It had a building permit on it, not built. Every other state is built. In Colorado, it's a building permit. They're going to try to trip you up on the state exam, guys. In Colorado, it's a building permit.
Oh.
Yeah. Other states, it's built before January 1st, 1978. This lead-based paint, January 1st, 1978. What are we looking at? 40 years? How many coats of paint has been over that lead-based paint?
Tons.
And it tends to leach through because it's more oily. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw paint peeling off a wall? Outside of the house, yeah, but on the inside of the house, I don't think I ever have. All the thousands of homes I've been in. But yet, we have to have this lead-based paint disclosure. So if babies are crawling around and they don't eat the paint, I tell you guys, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, it must have happened.
What happens is this: we got the EPA, Environmental Protection Association, and one of the ways they justify their existence is this lead-based paint. You didn't hear me say that, okay? But nonetheless, it is a huge issue for us. We have to take care of this. And if there was a building permit on this house before January 1st, 1978, we have to have a lead-based paint disclosure. And all this lead-based disclosure says is this: the seller checks the box, I don't know of any lead-based paint in this house, and the buyer checks the box, I'm not gonna require an inspection. That's what the lead-based paint does. And they're concerned about babies crawling around and eating this paint. When you and I were babies, nobody gave a darn how much paint we ate.
We came out all right.
Yeah, we came out kind of okay, maybe, I don't know. We had lead in our gas, we had lead we had lead in our pencils. You know, now we have graphite. We had lead every time we turned around back then. Is it an issue? We have to treat it as an issue, this lead-based paint. So, how about radon? Radon is one of the most misunderstood issues there is. All of the soil between Canada and Mexico and the mountain states has radon in it. It's radioactive soil, and it throws out radon. Now, radon is an anomaly. First of all, it's heavier than air, so it can't rise more than 4 feet above the ground. So your radon is going to be in your crawl space, if you have a house with a crawl space, or in your basement. It's not going to be in the upper level. Now, some of the older houses, they pull the air from the basement to the upper level. The modern houses don't. If you look at houses that were built after really 1965, you see those pipes on top of the houses? What those pipes are doing, they're sucking in air from the outside to stoke the hot water heater, the furnace, to make up when you turn on your water for your shower and everything. That water has to be compensated with air, or it's not going to flow. And that's where all the air comes from, is outside. So all of your radon is going to be in your basement. But it can't go higher than 4 feet because it's heavier than air is.
Jim,
Yeah.
does that mean a radon detector in an upstairs area is pretty much worthless?
Pretty much. Would you hear that question? Very good question. Is a radon detector in the upper level pretty worthless? Yeah. Check it and see. I'd be real surprised if you see anything, unless it's an old house. In the basement, yeah, you're going to get a reading on it. Every house in Colorado has radon, because all of our soil is radioactive. That's an overstatement, but not by much. Not by much, guys.
So what if I did one of those home kits, but I did it in the living room, but it was near a vent of my house, and I have a brand new house, and it came up higher than when the people came out and did theirs in the basement, where they put the machine in the basement.
The upper level was higher than the lower level?
Yeah, but it was right by a vent, so do you think that could be? And
Could
it was only
be.
by like 0.4, but like Oakwood Homes won't pay for it to be removed unless it's 4.0. Mine came out 4.1, theirs came out 3.7.
Guys, you know, this radon issue is an issue. Every house has radon. It does have radon. When I was a kid, I was raised over here on 29th and Raleigh. This is my hood. I was born and raised in this area, guys. And what happened, I lived in a basement for 21 years, and I'm sure my bed was within that 4 feet. I don't know. But I breathed radon all the time. And outside of some galloping senility every now and then, I'm kind of getting along okay, you know.
I never heard of it before that, and I was like,
Yeah.
it's not that.
But how do we handle radon with your people? Tell them this story, that there is radon in every house. You want to get a radon test? I ordered one 2 weeks ago. My people wanted one. $148, I think it was. $150. Tell them, I'll save you $150. It's going to come back positive. Take that $150 and go down to Home Depot and get a mitigation kit. You can get one for less than $500, $700, depending on how big your house is. And it's a mitigation kit that keeps that radon out of your basement forever. Whenever you see a house and you see a white pipe coming up the side of one of the sides of the house, that's a radon mitigation system that's in that house. And so tell your people, I'll save you $150. You're going to have positive radon in your house. Take that $150 and put it as a down payment over at Home Depot and put in a mitigation system. Maybe you even pay for it as part of a closing gift. I mean, on a typical deal now, you know, you only made $15,000 on this house. Can you afford a $500 closing gift? I think you can.
What are the dangers of radon?
The dangers of radon, it affects everybody differently, especially if you have any type of emphysema or something, it can be deadly. It's deadly. It's radioactive soil. And all of the western states, Montana's the worst state. And Wyoming and Colorado are right up there as the worst states for radon. And virtually you can say every house has radon. You're not going to be too far off.
Yeah,
Count on it.
Get a test.
Get a test done, or use that money for a test and say, I do have radon, no two ways about it, and put a system in. It's not that much more,
That
guys.
stat that says, like, if you, I don't know what the statistic is exactly, but if you smoke cigarettes and those aren't killing you, the radon definitely will. So there's your 2 ways to die.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Radon, cigarettes, and marijuana. You betcha. Let's smoke the heck up ourselves, you know. But anyway, guys, this radon is a serious, serious issue. But handle it correctly. Handle it correctly. And try to talk the people into getting mitigation on their house. It'll put their mind at ease and make you look very professional also. It's a mitigation. And that's where you mitigate it, you take care of it. There's a question on the state exam. What is easily discovered and easily mitigated? Radon. That's a question on the state exam, guys. You will see that question, guaranteed. What is easily discovered and easily mitigated? Radon. Radon. I've seen that question for the last 10 years, guys. You will have that question on the state exam. No two ways about it.
I have another question.
Yes.
So my mother-in-law just bought a house down the street from me, and they were living in like these fancy apartments that were brand new. They were the first people living in them. We went to go move, and they had to give a 60-day notice, and so they were gonna have to pay like an extra month even when they're gone, because they only gave 30. And we went to go move their stuff out of the closet. He had so much stuff in my father-in-law's closet. Well, the wall was wet, and like really wet.
Oh, no.
And it's been there for long, so I guess it's been coming down 4 stories for a long time. So like their floor was completely black under the carpet. Do you think they should have to pay for another month's rent? Even though,
Let's talk about this, guys. You know, in the Colorado Contracts and Regulations part of the course, when we get to chapter 21, when I start quoting things out of this manual, I need to get a life. I really do. But chapter 21 in the real estate manual is so good. It talks about property management and how we handle security deposits. It is so strong. It is so good. It'll save people a ton of money. And not only that, you say, well, yeah, I got screwed around by a landlord, but that was 5 years ago. Well, the statute of limitations is 2 years from discovery. When did you discover it? Today. Even though it happened 5 years ago, you can go after that landlord. And if there was fraud, you have 3 years from discovery. When we get to that part of the course, guys, chapter 21, make a note of it, please. You will dig that chapter. Because all of us have been screwed around by landlords. For me, it was 100 years ago, so I don't have much to do about it. But you, or your kids, or your grandkids, oh yeah, this is ways you can go after these landlords and make them pay up for the garbage that they pulled. This is strong, strong stuff. Who's had this part of the course yet? What'd you think of it? Did we go? When we went to the security department, did I teach it when you had it?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, you don't look impressed.
I work in property management.
Oh,
so,
do you? Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, this is chapter 21. When you get to it, please pay attention. It'll make your day, just knowing this stuff. Radon. What else? How about bentonite?
What?
bentonite. Between Canada and Mexico, all the Colorado, all the mountain states have, we don't have topsoil here. We have clay. It's called bentonite. And what happens when this clay gets wet, it expands. And it will just tear a foundation to shreds. How we build our foundations here is we build it with our concrete foundations, and we leave at least 1 foot between the foundation and the dirt. And we fill that hole with a French drain and sand, so that when that bentonite expands, it goes against the sand and not against the concrete. All of our basement floors in Colorado are floating floors, because that bentonite expands and expands our floors in our basement. We're seeing some real issues now where we have all these people, we have 10,000 people a month moving into Denver. And a lot of them are builders who built in other states back east and out west. They know nothing about bentonite. And what happens, you have them finish your basement. Come in and finish my basement. You bet, no problem. The problem is our basements are floating floors in Denver. In Colorado, forget Denver, Colorado, we have to have floating floors because that bentonite expands. And if you have a builder who's not used to building in Colorado, it's a huge issue. What they do is they put in their studs, just like they always do everywhere, and everything looks so wonderful. Great job you did in my basement. And then that bentonite gets wet and it expands. It'll shove those studs right through your upper level, completely demolish your house. You'll hear stories about this. I see this. I get people calling me about this. Come look at my house. For some reason, all of a sudden I've got gaps in my windows. My windows are just exploding on me. All these things, it'll demolish a house. You want to make sure you use a Colorado or a Denver contractor to finish your basement, guys. And what you do, you take your studs and you put them along the bottom all the way around the outside. And then you take the stud, you take chunks of it, and you put it on top of those studs, and then you put another layer of studs on top of that. And then you put your studs up, and you pull out those spacings, which gives it the space that you need, so when that bentonite expands, it doesn't shove those studs up the upper level. Did I paint a good enough picture? Can you explain that to people? Can I say it again so you can understand it? Yeah,
Does this like happen more than one time? I mean,
it happens every day, especially right now.
it, when it dries out, it goes, it reduces and then it gets wet, it expands.
When it gets wet, it expands and it shoves those studs right up in the upper level.
But now, does it quit expanding or does it keep expanding?
Oh, no, well, it expands, and then, of course, when it dries out, it goes down. But when it expands, it destroys everything. Your whole upper level is destroyed. Your windows explode. You have cracks all over the upper level.
Is there a certain area that's worse than others?
No,
It's all.
it's terrible. It's all around the exterior, around the perimeter of the house, where all your windows are.
Were
Oh, yeah.
floating floors being installed in the 50s or turn of the century?
Oh, yes, they were here. Yes.
When did they discover to build as that?
Oh, really? I had a home. I'm an appraiser, and I've been in thousands of homes, guys. And I've been in homes that were built in the oldest home I did was in 1882, and it was a floating floor. I went, cool. It was actually the builder's home who did it. So we had all the toys in it and everything, but 1882, there weren't that many toys.
Better quality back then.
No. Let's stop right there. What Melinda just said.
They did build a lot better quality
Our homes built better now or back then?
back then.
No comparison. They're built so much better now because what's happening, if you build a home that was built in 1880, what do you have? Plaster walls, no insulation, single pane windows. You have no insulation in the attic, you have nothing. it's drafty, it's full of mold, it's full of asbestos. It's an asbestos house. Asbestos wasn't just insulation, guys. It was over 3,000 building materials made out of asbestos. The linoleum in the kitchen is asbestos. The countertops are asbestos. Everything in that house, except for the studs in the wall and the nails, is asbestos.
Well, I wasn't referring to that, but more, they had more character.
Oh, character and style. Oh, yeah. And women are like that.
And they had better bones. It wasn't cheap materials.
The better bones in the house. Back then, this is what they did, okay? I like, and I will, I'll be your advocate on this, okay? What Melinda said here. Back then, this is how they built homes. You have your studs in the wall. In the wall here, there's all these studs. In this building, they're on 16-inch centers, and they're 2x4s. And they're on 16-inch centers. In other words, every stud in this wall is 16 inches apart from each other. What they did back in the turn of the century and be over, they were on 12-inch centers. Pretty strong. I mean, that is really strong. But there was no insulation between them. But very, very much better built as far as strength goes. Today, in modular housing and prefab housing, you know what the code is? You have your studs in the walls, and they're 2x6s on 16-inch centers. 2x6s on 16-inch centers, which means there's 50% more insulation and 50% more strength. Everybody follow what I'm saying here? Pretty strong. This is strong stuff. This is how modulars and prefab homes are made now. You go to companies like Richmond Homes, which is an exceptional builder, Lennar Homes. You know what they're doing now? They are doing it 2x6s, but they're on 24-inch centers, instead of 16-inch centers. So they get a lot more insulation, but it's not as strong as 2x4s on 16-inch centers. I hit you with a lot of information there, guys. If you didn't quite grasp it all, come see me. I can tell you about it again. But so what are we looking at? We're looking at prefab homes or modular homes. Blow away stick-built homes now. They are so well built. If you were to take your home or my home, throw it on the back of a trailer and run it down the highway at 70 miles an hour, there wouldn't be a thing left of it. But on prefab homes, that's how they deliver them. You know, they are just extremely well-built homes. So anyway, this is something to consider when you're looking at housing, guys. Does this make sense? Hopefully. But anyway, so let's get back to bentonite. Okay, bentonite is a huge issue. There's some areas in town that are worse than others. If you go to the Flatirons area up by Boulder, a huge, terribly bad band of bentonite up there. Flatirons Mall. That shopping center is about ready to be torn down because there's nothing left there except I think Penny's the only thing up there anymore.
Wait, that's
Flatirons?
No, that's Westminster.
No, Westminster, I know, but I mean Flatirons, there's not much left besides Penny's up there. They used to have restaurants up there, and they closed them all down because the ceiling tiles used to fall down on people when they were eating because of the bentonite up there. It's a real bad streak of bentonite. If you go up to the Flatirons Mall after a big rainstorm, look in the corners of that mall. You'll be seeing daylight coming through. They're about ready to condemn that mall and tear it down. They have a terrible, terrible problem with bentonite up there. There's over 1 million square feet of office space that they can't rent out because of that. And if you drive up there, the roads are like this. They didn't do it that way. That's the bentonite that's happening. Another really bad area is down on Bellevue and Sims. Another streak of bentonite down there that has really caused some serious problems. More so than other areas. But there's bentonite all over Colorado. Bentonite is part of our environment. Again, we're talking about legal issues now. And bentonite is a legal issue that you're going to be dealing with one way or another sometime in your career. Okay. What else? What other fun things we're going to talk about? We're talking about legal issues, things that you should be concerned about. You're looking at houses, guys. What else should you be concerned about? How about electromagnetic fields? Electromagnetic fields are everywhere. They come off of these lights. They come off of your phone. They come off of your watch on your wrist has a battery in it. We're surrounded by electromagnetic fields everywhere we go. My cell phone. These cell phones are so powerful. When I walk in a room sometimes, it interferes with the TV reception. Yet I wear it right next to my heart. Nobody's going to live forever, so you just kind of take it like it is. But these electromagnetic fields I'm talking about are the ones that go down these floodplains, these big towers, where they run that electricity down. You know what I'm talking about, I hope?
Yeah.
You see, not the ones that go down the street, the single telephone poles. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the big towers. I don't know how else to describe it. And if you've got a house close to these towers, take off 20% of its value. And what is close enough to hear them? And you can hear them 2 blocks away. I've done houses where where those wires go right over the top of the house. And it's wild. You'll read in the paper. We don't have papers anymore, but anyway. But you read somewhere where they say yes, they've done studies, and these electromagnetic fields are killing people right and left. The next month you read an article where they say there's no problem at all. But the market does not like them. The market doesn't like them. And because of that, whether they're good or bad, if they are close to one of these electromagnetic fields, take off 20% off the price of one of those homes. So that's another environmental issue we've got to be aware of. Any questions on that? You understand what I'm talking about with these electromagnetic fields?
Those just like interfere with your electricity or?
Yeah, they just, they show pictures of people with fluorescent lights, and you stand underneath them and the light comes on, you hold them like this, things like this. And it does, it's got to have an effect on you, health-wise. Who has heard of urea formaldehyde? This is one of the most amazing things. Urea formaldehyde. Urea is Latin for urine. And formaldehyde is back in high school with the dead frogs and the formaldehyde guys. Some clown or somebody came up with this invention. They made insulation out of this urea formaldehyde. Back in the early 80s, not knowing any better, I had my whole house insulated with it. All my walls, my ceiling. It's made out of urine and formaldehyde. Who did this? Amazing, amazing. They banned it from the market. Then all of a sudden it came back on the market because it was such a money maker. And now we still see it. Where we see it now primarily is in cabinetry. High-end cabinetry. Go home tonight and open up one of your kitchen cabinets. And when you do, if you see a stamp in there, it doesn't have to say UF for urea formaldehyde, it could say anything. If it has a stamp inside there, it's got urea formaldehyde in it. And that's where we store our plates and our cups and our glasses. Is that a gagger or what?
Why urine?
Why? Exactly. They put urine and formaldehyde, and they use bovine urine. They use cow urine. And
That
it's the
sounds so
worst
bad.
job in the world. Because what they do is they take you out to a field of cows, and they give you a bucket. And you have to go and I'm kidding. I'm kidding. They actually take it from dead cows.
Oh.
And they make this urea formaldehyde. Is that insane? Who thought of this? What's that?
That doesn't sound like a better of a job.
A federal job?
Better.
Better of a job.
When did they start doing that, and are they still?
Well, I did my home probably 82. I mean, I know then they were doing it, you know. Anyway, so it's still out there, this stupid urea formaldehyde. All of these things come into play. Now, let's talk about some general environmental issues. Hey guys, many of you will be making some very, very good money very, very soon. Guys, there's a lot of stupid money out there. Some real stupid money. Make sure that you're investing your money correctly in the correct charities, etc. You want to take care of other people. We all get that way. Money changes people. Make sure you protect your marriage. When you're making a bunch of money, you look at things differently. Protect your marriage. Protect your friends. Keep your faith. Make sure that you look at God in every part of your life. And make sure that you spend your money correctly, honestly, and intelligently. Right now, it's estimated that there's a quadrillion trees in the world. A quadrillion trees. If we chop down a tree every day for every man, woman, and child, that'd be 7.5 billion trees we chop down every day, and they didn't reproduce themselves. It would take 18,000 years to chop down every tree. But they do reproduce themselves. And yet we have Save the Tree Foundation. Don't contribute to things like that. I mean, really, use your head. I bought a thing at Wendy's, not a Wendy's, but at Starbucks a couple weeks ago, and the napkin said, we use reconditioned paper and we saved 61,000 trees. I was touched. A tear came to my eye. Guys, you can look out this window and see 61,000 trees. I mean, come on. Again, be careful. Be careful. There's different things out there you got to be careful of. All of this ice melting all around the world. 75% of the world is covered by oceans. Only 25% is covered by land. Less than 0.1% of that land is covered by ice. And they're talking about all this ice melting. Why aren't the oceans rising? They're not going to rise. And we're never going to lose all the ice. The oceans are not rising. They're not going to rise. If they do rise, it's going to be a foot, maybe. If that. Pay attention. Pay attention, guys. Don't contribute to these stupid environmental ideas. It's a money pit. It's a bottomless pit that they're throwing money in we don't need. They're talking about all this ice melting. You hear about it. The polar bears are stuck over here. They can't get on the ice. Why aren't the oceans rising? They're not going to rise. Use your head out there, guys. Pay attention. Do your studying on this stuff. It's a bottomless pit of money as far as all this stuff goes. So anyway, take that for what it's worth. You don't like it, write me a letter, I don't care. But I tell you what, study it. Study it. Don't take my word. Don't you ever take anything Tony or I say for its face value. Look it up. Study it. Don't take Tony or my word for anything. Look it up yourself and study it, guys. And you want to talk to me one-on-one? we'll go to my office, we'll close the door if you want to, and we'll talk about it. We're not gonna argue. But anyway, you guys, some of you are making some really good money. Don't waste it on crap. And there's a lot of crap out there. Any questions? We studied a lot of environmental issues tonight, current legal issues. In this part of the book, at the very last page of the book, there's a page that you signed that you reviewed this stuff. And we did. We talked about things like mold and radon and all this other things. And you did say, that last page of the book, just sign it. That said that you completed this part of the course. Tony did the first half on Monday. We did this part today. So you can sign that piece of paper, turn it in, you're done with current legal issues.
Is class over?
Pardon me?
Is class over?
Unless you want to stay longer. I don't know. Guys, we pretty much, are there any questions about not only current legal issues, but like I said, tonight is an easy, easy day, guys. Easy, easy day. Are there any questions you want to talk about? If not, we're done.